In the annals of history, few names are as synonymous with both genius and tragedy as J.Robert Oppenheimer. A man of paradox, he was a brilliant scientist who could recite poetry in multiple languages and a visionary leader who marshaled the greatest minds of a generation. He was also the man who gave the world its most destructive weapon. They called him the father of the atomic bomb, but that title tells only a fraction of his story. It hints at the triumph of science, but it conceals the immense moral weight that followed. It celebrates the creation, but it ignores the destruction and the personal ruin that came in its wake. His life wasn't a simple tale of good versus evil, but a complex, winding journey through the heart of the 20th century. It's the story of a privileged boy from New York who became a leader of the American scientific establishment. It's the story of a man who raced against time to save the world, only to find himself persecuted by the very country he served. This is not a story about the movie. This is the real story of J.Robert Oppenheimer. We will explore the full arc of his life, from his formative years and his rise as a scientific star to his monumental leadership of the Manhattan Project. We will delve into the profound sense of guilt that haunted him and the political betrayal that ultimately cost him everything. Join us as we uncover the true paradox of Oppenheimer, a man who created a new world and then found himself forever haunted by what he had done. Our story begins not in the deserts of New Mexico, but in the heart of New York City on April 22nd. Julius Robert Oppenheimer was born into a world of privilege and intellectual ambition. His father, a wealthy textile importer from Germany, and his mother, an artist, provided an environment that was rich with culture and learning. Oppenheimer's childhood was one of books, poetry, and a precocious fascination with the natural world. From a young age, he wasn't just interested in things. He was obsessed with understanding their fundamental workings. He attended the Ethical Culture School, an institution that emphasized not just knowledge, but moral reasoning. It was here that his wide-ranging interests blossomed. While other boys were playing sports, Oppenheimer was studying mineralogy with a passion so intense he was invited to lecture at the New York Mineralogical Club at the astonishing age of 12. He arrived at Harvard University in 1922, a young man with a mind already operating on a different plane. He dove into the sciences, devouring chemistry, physics, and even languages like Latin and Greek. His brilliance was undeniable, but so was his struggle with the more mundane aspects of life. He graduated summa cum laude in just 3 years, an academic rocket ship fueled by raw intellect. But the real crucible of his genius lay across the Atlantic. In the 1920s, Europe was the epicenter of a scientific revolution. The old certainties of classical physics were crumbling, and a new, bewildering world of quantum mechanics was taking shape. Oppenheimer traveled to Cambridge to study under J.J. Thomson, but he found the tedious, hands-on work of the laboratory unfulfilling. He was a theorist at heart, a man who saw the universe in equations and abstract concepts. His pivotal moment came when he moved to the University of Göttingen in Germany, the intellectual heart of this new physics. Here, under the mentorship of the legendary Max Born, Oppenheimer found his true calling. He was in his element, surrounded by the greatest minds of his generation. In Göttingen, he thrived, earning his PhD and publishing papers that established him as a significant new voice in the field. He had absorbed the very best of European physics and forged a reputation that preceded him. By the time he returned to the United States, he was no longer just a brilliant student. He was a leader in the quantum age, ready to build a new generation of American scientists. The stage was set for his return, and the events that would follow would change the world forever. Upon his return to the United States, Oppenheimer was more than just a physicist. He was a bridge between the European intellectual heartland and the burgeoning American scientific community. He was the force that would help build what some would call the American School of Physics. In 1929, he took on a unique position, holding a joint professorship at both the University of California, Berkeley, and the California Institute of Technology. It was at Berkeley where his true genius as a leader emerged. He didn't just lecture, he inspired. He captivated his students with his quick wit, his vast knowledge, and his ability to make even the most complex ideas seem elegant and accessible. Oppenheimer cultivated a unique intellectual atmosphere, drawing some of the brightest minds from across the country. His seminars were legendary, creating a tight-knit community of brilliant young physicists who would go on to make significant contributions to science. He was charismatic, demanding, and utterly magnetic. He wasn't just a professor, he was a guru, a central sun around whom a new constellation of American physics revolved. While his scientific career was soaring, a parallel awakening was taking place. Until the 1930s, Oppenheimer had largely been detached from politics, living in a world of equations and abstract thought. But the world outside his university halls was growing darker. The Great Depression exposed him to the struggles of ordinary people, and the rise of fascism in Europe, particularly in Germany, directly threatened his Jewish heritage and the very foundations of the scientific community he loved. He began to read Marx and found himself drawn to leftist causes, contributing money to organizations and charities that supported anti-fascist efforts. This period marked a crucial shift in his life, the transition from a purely theoretical mind to a man deeply concerned with the political and moral state of the world. This newfound political engagement also connected him to a woman named Jean Tatlock, a brilliant and dedicated member of the Communist Party. These relationships and affiliations, innocent as they were in the context of the 1930s, would become a source of profound trouble decades later. But at the time, they were simply part of a brilliant mind's journey to understand the world, a journey that was about to be interrupted by a call to duty far greater than he could have ever imagined. By the early 1940s, the world was engulfed in the inferno of World War II. The threat of Nazi Germany developing an atomic weapon loomed large in the minds of Allied scientists and leaders. It was a race against time, a desperate push to harness the fundamental forces of nature for a purpose of unprecedented power. Leading the American effort to build this weapon was General Leslie Groves, a no-nonsense military engineer known for his immense organizational skills. Groves recognized the urgency and the sheer scale of the scientific challenge. He needed a scientific leader, someone who could not only grasp the complex theoretical physics, but also manage a vast, top-secret project involving some of the brightest minds on the planet. Against the advice of some who questioned his lack of a Nobel Prize or significant administrative experience, Groves chose J.Robert Oppenheimer to head the secret weapons laboratory. It was a bold and ultimately transformative decision. Groves saw in Oppenheimer a unique blend of intellectual brilliance, charisma, and an almost mystical ability to understand the intricacies of the atomic problem. In the remote desert of New Mexico, a secret city known only as Site Y began to take shape. This was Los Alamos, the epicenter of the Manhattan Project. Under Oppenheimer's direction, a collection of the world's most brilliant physicists, chemists, and engineers converged, their families uprooted and their lives shrouded in secrecy. They were a disparate group, often with clashing egos and scientific philosophies, but Oppenheimer somehow managed to unite them under a common, urgent goal. He wasn't a micromanager. Instead, he fostered an environment of intense collaboration and intellectual freedom. He could discuss quantum mechanics with one scientist, the intricacies of metallurgy with another, and the logistics of the entire operation with Groves. His understanding of the project's multifaceted nature was unparalleled. He was the intellectual conductor of this extraordinary scientific orchestra. Years of relentless work culminated in the early morning hours of July 16, 1945. In the Jornada del Muerto desert, the world held its breath. Codenamed Trinity, this was the test that would determine if their theoretical calculations were correct, if the unimaginable power they had sought to unleash was truly achievable. The explosion was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. A blinding flash of light illuminated the pre-dawn sky, followed by a deafening roar that echoed across the desert. A colossal mushroom cloud climbed into the atmosphere, a terrifying testament to the power they had unleashed. In that moment, the world had irrevocably changed. As he witnessed the dawn of the atomic age, a line from the Bhagavad Gita echoed in Oppenheimer's mind. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." It was a moment of profound realization, a dawning awareness of the immense moral responsibility that now rested upon their shoulders. The race had been won, but the implications of their victory were only just beginning to be understood. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki brought a swift and brutal end to the war. But for J.Robert Oppenheimer, the victory was anything but simple. The triumph of science was immediately overshadowed by the horror of its application. The man who had once been a national hero began to feel the crushing weight of what he had helped unleash. In a tense meeting with President Truman, Oppenheimer famously said he felt he had blood on his hands. Truman, a pragmatist to the core, was reportedly dismissive, telling him that the blood was on his own hands, not Oppenheimer's. This exchange was more than a personal disagreement. It was a symptom of a profound split. Oppenheimer, the man who had created the weapon, was now becoming its most prominent critic. He began to advocate passionately for international control of nuclear energy, arguing that in a post-atomic world, cooperation was the only path to survival. But his calls for restraint and dialogue were at odds with the escalating tensions of the nascent Cold War. The Soviet Union's successful test of its own atomic bomb in 1949 ignited a new and terrifying race, the race to build the even more destructive hydrogen bomb. Oppenheimer was staunchly against the development of the hydrogen bomb, calling it a weapon of genocide. This stance put him in direct conflict with powerful political and military figures, including Edward Teller, who would become known as the father of the H-bomb, and Lewis Strauss, a vindictive chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. Oppenheimer was no longer seen as an asset, but as an obstacle. The Cold War was a time of paranoia and fear, and Oppenheimer's past leftist associations became a convenient tool for his enemies. In 1954, a secret security clearance hearing was convened to review his loyalty to the United States. The proceedings were a travesty of justice. His private conversations were recorded, his personal life was scrutinized, and the very friends he had once defended now turned against him. The hearing was less a search for the truth and more a character assassination designed to silence a powerful voice. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. Despite being cleared of any charges of disloyalty, the committee revoked his security clearance, effectively exiling him from the world of top-secret government work he had helped create. Oppenheimer's public life was shattered. His rise had been meteoric, and his fall was equally complete. The man who had once stood at the pinnacle of power and influence was now a pariah in the very country he had helped make a superpower. The father of the atomic bomb was now a man stripped of his influence, left to grapple with his legacy in a world forever altered by his work. Stripped of his security clearance and exiled from the world of classified work, Oppenheimer's final years were spent in a different kind of role. He remained the director of the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey, a position he held until his death. It was here, surrounded by books and colleagues, that he found a measure of peace and intellectual freedom. Although he was no longer involved in the nuclear programs of his nation, he remained a powerful and respected voice on a range of topics, from science and ethics to poetry and philosophy. He was a symbol of the moral responsibility of the scientist, a living testament to the dangers of unrestrained power and political paranoia. As the years passed, public opinion began to turn. The Cold War witch hunts of the McCarthy era faded, and many began to view Oppenheimer's persecution as a grave injustice. In a symbolic act of official rehabilitation, President Lyndon B. Johnson awarded him the Enrico Fermi Award in 1963. It was a partial vindication, a moment when the nation acknowledged the debt it owed him and the wrong it had committed. Oppenheimer died from throat cancer in 1967, but his story and the questions it raised did not die with him. His life serves as a powerful and enduring cautionary tale about the intersection of science, power, and ethics. He was the man who, in a single moment of genius, brought a godlike power to humanity and then spent the rest of his life grappling with the consequences. So how do we ultimately define him? Was he the brilliant hero who saved the world from fascism? Was he the tragic victim of political betrayal? Or was he something more profound, a modern-day Prometheus who stole fire from the heavens for humanity, only to be punished for it? His legacy forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. It asks us if we are truly ready for the power we are capable of creating. J.Robert Oppenheimer's life wasn't just a story about a man and a bomb. It was a story about the world he helped create, a world we are all still living in.